Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mugdha Lele, and on behalf of the TechX team at Venture Center, I'm happy to host the third wave of our Only One Theme Awareness Talk series on innovation management. We are meeting after a long time after the festive season, so welcome back to this talk series. And today is the fifth talk in this wave of Only One Theme. Today's topic discusses technology readiness levels, and our speaker for today is Dr. Hiran Vedam. Let me briefly introduce Dr. Vedam before we begin the talk. Hiran is the co-founder of Ashwatta, a venture studio which is building high-impact climate tech startups in India. Prior to this, she was a business fellow with the Breakthrough Energy Fellows program. As part of the program, she supported the progression of early-stage industry transforming climate solutions of the BA Innovator Fellows towards global markets. Specifically, Hiran has supported them with their technology de-risking, piloting, and demonstration, supply chain mapping, IP strategy, and startup financing. Earlier in her career, Hiran was the managing director Asia for Nano Holdings LLC, investing in early stage advanced material based solutions for energy efficiency, environmental sustainability, and water. She has considerable experience in different areas of the lab to market journey in various geographies like US, Canada, UK, Singapore, and India. Hiran has worked extensively with venture center startups, mentoring them. She was also the chief editor of our Prime Playbook, a practical guide to the science based entrepreneurship, which is an excellent resource created at Venture Center. With this brief introduction, welcoming Hiran and handing over the session to you.
Thank you, Mugdha.
Headlines.
Are you able to share it now?
Yeah.
We can see your slide.
Okay. All right. Allow multiple.
Hiran, we are not able to hear. Yeah, your slides are moving, but your voice is breaking.
Okay, not sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you well.
Okay, all right. All right, okay, let's get started. Chat. I'm just setting this up. Okay, all right. Okay, so today we'll learn about technology readiness levels. TRL is something probably most of you are familiar with in one way or the other. I mean, every time you apply for a grant funding, there is they specifically say we support technologies from this TRL to that TRL and so on. So let's kind of try to understand what this TRL is and where, how to use this effectively, and what are some of the opportunities and challenges with this. Okay, so this was the original origins of TRL are from the 1970s and really got formalized in 1989. And the initial version had 7 levels. NASA was using this pretty much internally for a long time. And while it was useful, the last 2 levels, 6 and 7, caused a lot of confusion among different users. So prototype and, those kind of terms were kind of loose and not very clear. So the framework was expanded to include 9 levels that most of us are familiar with. So it looks something like this. So it goes from TRL1, which is your basic concept, all the way to TRL9, which is more like ready to take off, ready to deploy in the market. if you take, like, for example, an invention that is in the lab is a TRL2. And if you have developed a specific application for the technology, it kind of, there is some development, then it goes to TRL3. Then, like, when there is a sort of a product that looks very close to the final, then it's TRL7. It's actually integrated into like a system that where it's actually used to spray water on your windscreen. Then it has reached TRL9 and ready for deployment. Um, so let's kind of try to do, I mean, I'll ask you a few questions and see if that makes sense. So here is an example of a technology that was developed by a company. I'll tell you the company after we answer this question. So this is a chemical process that a fermentation process that takes carbon dioxide and produces ethanol. So this is a picture of a system that they were building. Okay, so looking at this and based on the context I gave you, try to identify what is the TRL of the technology shown. So I have a QR code here. I'll also type the URL. Where do I find this? Okay, sorry, just give me a sec. Okay. So if you and you can ask me any additional questions you may have to clarify if you want, like what is the TRL and so on. If you have any specific questions that you want to ask about to determine the TRL, that's fine. But just I mean, based on the information you have, can you determine what is the TRL of the solution that you are seeing here, or the process that you are seeing here that's under development? So please use the Mentimeter code, and either you can use the QR code, or you can use the link that I have posted in the chat box and answer the first question. Are you able to answer this?
So they can
any...
put their answers in the chat box.
Or actually, I mean, if they use a QR code or link, they can actually.
Okay. Yeah, it will get generated at your end.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I do not see. I do not see that getting updated on Menti. Has everybody responded? I don't see any responses on the.
So even I have responded, but I even can you not see a single response? I have responded here on the link.
Okay. Yes, I can see the responses now. So let me present this. Okay. All right, now let me share this. How do I share? I have to unshare this and then
Yeah,
share
you'll
that
have to
window.
share the other screen.
Okay. All right. So if you look at the responses, like some of you said it is TRL 5.6, some said 5 or 7 or 8. The one even said it is TRL 9. So based on the information I gave you, it is very hard to for anybody to kind of make out what is the TRL. And by looking at the picture or looking at a process, you cannot really say whether it is, I mean, what the TRL level is. So basically, TRL is very, very subjective, and to a large extent, it needs a very deep understanding of what the process is, where the technology is at, and what is the roadmap from there to reach the market. So that requires deep knowledge of the domain and also the particular specific process that you are working with. So you cannot, I mean, so when somebody throws a number and says it is a TRL 5 or a TRL 6, doesn't really mean anything because you don't know their expertise, domain expertise. You don't know their understanding of the process and how it integrates with everything else. So that just saying a number or putting a number is most of the time pretty meaningless. So let's kind of go into so because there are these domain specific nuances and there are product versus process and so on, there are differences. Different agencies have come up with a slightly different definition of what a TRL means. For example, Department of Energy in the US has modified the TRL, especially after the TRL 4 from 5 onwards, to incorporate like field validation and demonstration, scale up and commercial launch. Similarly, in India, BIRAC has come up with TRLs for different solutions. So for medical devices, they clearly specify what TRL, each TRL means. For agriculture, they have specific TRLs. So the one example I'm showing here is for artificial intelligence, big data, and so on. So it becomes a very nuanced exercise in terms of what specific TRL means to us. Um, so I'm giving you another example now, where this is actually a system that was developed by a team for Carbon Zero Challenge. So it is there is a battery pack here. They have retrofitted a regular truck with a battery pack. Now, based on looking at that, how long do you think it will take for the technology to hit the market? So again, use the same link and answer the same question. So the same link, and if you can respond. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that and then share this. So you see again, like somebody looking at it is saying it will take 2 to 3 years, and somebody else is saying 4 to 5 years, and so on. So again, there is a lot of subjective element to this. And one of the lessons here is that, I mean, if you go to your investor and say, okay, this is TRL 6, and the investor is thinking, oh, it'll take 2 to 3 years, but you know what needs to be done and your expectation is 4 to 5. So just communicating based on the TRLs just creates that different set of expectations between you and the investor in terms of how long it will take to get to the market, right? Let's continue with the same example and then look at how much funding is required for this. Okay, if you take this technology and say, okay, I need to take it to the market. So I have told you, okay, let's say it was a TRL 5, and now you're trying to take it to the market. How much funding is required to do this? So again, please respond to the Mentimeter and give your best guess of how much it takes, funding it takes to build this. Are people able to answer to this question?
The responding is off, it says.
Okay.
Now maybe they can try.
Okay, I guess we got about 8 responses, and again the message is the same, that the funding that is required. I mean, we are not able to gauge how much funding is required just based on the information about the TRL and where I'm looking at the prototype, right? So it has a very limited power in terms of predicting what are the requirements to take it forward. And this is something we have to keep in mind, because when somebody says, or when the funding agencies come up with their own TRL framework, they have certain expectations in terms of, okay, here is the quantum of funding I can put into this, and I want to take a technology from TRL X to TRL Y. So the kind, when they say that I'm giving you, let's say, 500,000, and I expect you to go from TRL 3 to 5, or then they are focused on those technologies that fit that bracket. So that's what it means. So if your technology meets those requirements, it's a good fit for the funding agency. Otherwise, it's not a good fit for the funding agency. So you have to think about, look at how an agency is defining their TRLs and defining the quantum of funding they are making available for each step, and figure out what is it that they are, whether your technology meets the requirements of the funding agency before you even apply, and then suitably modify your proposals to the funding agencies. So TRL just tells you that the technology is mature. It doesn't tell you anything about whether the technology can be manufactured easily. How what is the complexity of the manufacturing line that you need to build to actually produce this, and what is the maturity of that manufacturing line. Okay, so that's why we our the developers have come up with an additional readiness level, which focus on the manufacturing level. Because once you have a product, you need to manufacture it at scale. Sometimes you can use existing manufacturing facilities and produce it. Sometimes you have to create a whole new manufacturing line for that, and that will take time, right? And depending on how complex it is and how many pieces of the equipment in the manufacturing line are ready or not ready, this manufacturing readiness level will vary, and this will also affect your time to market. And so there are definitions like, I mean, I can produce it at at the lab scale, so I can create like batch process, small batches in the lab. To okay, I have a prototype that kind of looks like the shop floor one. To it is actually a scaled down version of what the actual process looks like, to a pilot line, to a regular fully manufactured full production line. So again, if you have a product that requires a manufacturing line, or like if you want to do scaled manufacturing, what are some of the constraints that are related to scale manufacturing at scale? Those are the things you have to this particular definition takes into account. And then there are the commercialization readiness levels. That's another one that is related to, okay, if you're developing a new technology, taking it to the market is not just about maturing the technology, being able to manufacture it. There are all these proof points that you need in terms of customer discovery, in terms of being able to deploy the solution at a to the at the in the target markets, identifying your proper target markets, and like building your business case for the value that it provides to the customer. So all of these building the value proposition, building your supply chains into your distribution networks, all of these are pieces that need to be ready for you to be able to commercialize this technology. And that's where the commercialization readiness level comes. And this is mainly, I mean, ARPA-E is the one that developed it, and later several others have used it. Recently, I mean, as we are looking at climate tech and some of the solutions being developed, we are seeing that there is a lot of barrier between developing the technology and the adoption of these technologies by incumbent industry. For example, if I have a new process for producing green steel, and it requires either retrofitting an existing plant, or building a new plant, or taking out a piece that exists in the current manufacturing of steel, and then replacing it with your particular solution, right? And this there is so the cost of delivery of this solution may be much higher than what the current process that they're using. The performance of this may be there, but it's still lower than the existing processes. So let's say you have a new process to produce steel. You have to ensure that it has the same kind of properties as the steel that you're producing using conventional processes, right? And the operators must be familiar with being able to do this. And where do you raise the capital for doing something like this? If it is an existing process where the risks are known, then I mean, you could do project financing. You understand how to get the unit financed to put into your plan in a plant. But if it's a new process, no bank would give money to install something like that, because there are risks involved in it. Or it might require new infrastructure, like it might require hydrogen, for example. Then you need to have a way to get that hydrogen, produce that hydrogen, get the hydrogen to the unit. And so there are all these other complexities that you need to take care of, before your technology is ready for adoption by the steel plant, right? So there is this adoption readiness level that ARPA-E put together last year or the year before, to kind of track this development along with the TRLs and the MRLs and the other kind of things. So this is very, I mean, this is in some ways similar to the TCM framework that Niti Aayog came up with, but this one is more specifically for climate tech solutions. So, I mean, we have talked about TRLs, we've talked about MRLs, we've talked about CRLs, ARLs, lots of different scales. Why do we need so many scales? And when do you use, I mean, how do you choose which particular scale you use for understanding the roadmap for your own solution and for your own deployment? If you look at our lab to market journey, there are variations of this, but I mean, it goes from idea to like a proof of principle, which is usually a lab scale system that you build, or lab scale proof that scientifically, yes, this is possible, to a bench scale proof of concept, to a demonstration scale system, to system that is placed in your customer side to prove that this actually creates value for the customer. So the first product market fit stage, where you whoever is willing to use this system, you place them in their site, you test them out. So you're building your product market fit. Now, and so on, right? So if you look at this roadmap, there are several risks along the way. So I would like you to go back to your Mentimeter, the same link, and choose your identify the risks that that are related to this whole journey. From lab to market, what are the different risks that you would identify along this journey? Are you able to answer this? Okay, I will share this. Proof of principle, proof of concept, and proof of value are not your risks. Those are the stages of your thing. But what I'm asking is, what are some of the challenges? Like, for example, customers is identified as a risk, funding, revenue growth. Data validation, okay. Okay, you're saying that, I mean, somebody here wrote that upscaling, okay, I think there is some confusion. Here you have written like stages and what you do, but what I'm looking for in terms of risks is, for example, funding troubles is a potential risk, because if you don't have funding, you cannot build it. So that is definitely a risk. For affordability, I mean, yeah, I mean, your price point could be a potential risk, yes. Product relevance, customer experience. Regulatory risk is a big one, because people tend to I mean, if the regulatory environment is not favorable, for example, like in carbon markets, I mean, in India we don't have carbon pricing. It's being talked about, but it doesn't exist. So if I am building a solution that a carbon removal solution, then there is a regulatory risk that it might not take off in the country because I mean there is no penalty for putting carbon in the air, or like there is no incentive for me to capture my carbon and store it. Right. So there are a variety of these risks that you see, and I will also share with you like some of the risks other people identified. The things like is there feedstock security? I mean, am I able to get the raw materials that I need? Am I able to get am I able to protect my intellectual property? Or like I'm depending on imports, for example. So all these are different kinds of risks that exist, right? And these risks are different for different kinds of solutions, right? So I mean, each technology will have different kind of risks. So for example, something that is a platform technology that can go into different products that can be applicable to different domains, then the risk profile of that technology would be very different than a technology that leads to a single product that can go into different domains, or a technology that is very specific to that goes into a product that goes into a specific domain, right? So not all these technologies are the same, or the way you deploy them is the same. Sometimes you would just license the technology. Sometimes you would build an application layer above that for before you sell it in the market. Sometimes you develop products or like services around the product. So depending on like what is the solution that you are providing to the end user, these technologies and how you assess them will vary, right? And like some technology is going to products, some are processes, some going to a system. So which means that you have a piece of the system or a subsystem, or you could have it hardware or software. So you cannot have a single framework or like one set of frameworks with certain benchmark that meets all these requirements. So that's why you have different kinds of TRLs, different kinds of MRLs, different kinds of like scales that you use for in different domains and different areas. And not all markets are also same, because some solutions go into consumer market, some solutions go into small and medium companies, some are solutions that are used by a company internally, some are used by a company that they use to make a product that is sold in the market. So the market dynamics are also very different, right? And some of these are going to technology based businesses, some of these just go to consumers. So you might put a solution into a software that a hotel uses to serve a consumer, or I could develop a system, a process that goes into producing a chemical that is a feedstock to some other process, right? So all these variations means that the solution that you build or the roadmap to getting it to the market, or the maturity to take the technology to maturity is very different. So as I explained to you earlier, so we first need to understand the funding agency's assessment framework. So when they say, okay, this is my framework for my TRLs, try to understand what they are asking for and how they would evaluate your solution in terms of TRL. And it is, if you're using TRL for your own internal purposes, because it's a way for you to communicate among your own team as to where your solution is at. Then it's very important to understand that like what those specific TRLs mean for a specific technology. So if I am developing a carbon capture solution, and then I need to create what those proof points are for it to go from TRL 1 to 4 to 6 to 7, 8, and 9. So what are those proof points? So when I say if it is able to capture so much carbon per unit area of my material of my membrane, then I would say, okay, that is my TRL 5, for example. Or if I say my energy consumption for the system is at X joules per ton, then that is my proof point. So be very specific as to what that TRL means for that particular technology you're developing. And it is not enough to develop a system in isolation, right? It needs to work along with something else. So if I build a carbon capture solution, that's it needs to be integrated with a chemical process from where the carbon is coming in. Then you need to understand what are the constraints in that environment, and how will this system interface with the other process that you're going to be interfacing with, and what are some of the challenges in the interface, what are some of the challenges in the um, um, in linking these two systems, and the environment in which it will be operating. So you need to be clear about these things when you assess, or when you put some numbers, and when you create your roadmap based on your TRL maturity. And estimating the TRL of a particular technology is a very resource intensive process. And it requires a lot of work in terms of, what are the resources required, what are the risks involved, what are the constraints that it needs to handle. It is a resource intensive process. So use it, understanding how much resources you're willing to deploy for keeping track of your TRLs and progression through these different stages. And if you are not clear what it takes, I mean, this is something you have seen, like when you go to a researcher and say, what's the TRL of your technology? They generally overestimate it, because their view of the world is very different than you go to an industry, somebody from the industry, and show them the same technology. Typically the TRL they would give is very low, because they understand what it takes to take the technology that's being developed in a research environment and to deploy it at a larger scale, and to take it to the market. So if you're not clear about what those proof points should be, or what that technology maturity roadmap looks like, consult experts in your field to understand all the potential risks and what are the mitigation strategies that you need to put in place, and then estimate your TRL and the proof points that you need to get there. So I'll stop here. Quite happy to take any questions or any concerns you have. Okay, I see several messages here.
There are a few in the chat box where Gaurav is asking, is there any certification agency that verify the TRL of any developed technology?
Not that I know of. So, I mean, it is a communication tool for you internally and with your funding agency. So it's either the funding agency tells you, this is my TRL framework, and you follow that. Or if you're saying you want to develop something for your internal use, then it is for you. So I do not see a relevance of a certification agency, although there are ISO standards that for TRL. But keep in mind that if you're especially developing a new technology and taking it to the market, it is, you have to come up with what those proof points are and what it means to you. At a macro level, you can, you have the broad guidelines that you have from, what a TRL 9 means and a TRL 1 or 4 means. But in with respect to your own technology, you need to kind of drill that down, because you know where you are trying to deploy it and what it takes to develop that technology from where it is to the end point of market.
Okay, so he continues the question with, if not, then how will anyone ensure that, assure the funding agency that this is the TRL of the technology?
So when they, like, for example, we saw in Bayrak, right? So let me pull that slide back. So Bayrak, for example, here says, like, for a TRL3, concept pre-alpha script is ready and working draft is created. So they have specified what a TRL5 means, right? So when you go to them and say, my technology is TRL4, you better ensure that you check off all those boxes that they have identified as the requirements for them to rate something as TRL4. So that's how you would do it.
Yeah, there's another question on TR. What's the TRL for technology where product specs are not developed?
Well, if you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're, I mean, you will not know where you're getting, right? I mean, you are trying to develop a product, then you have to have some specifications drafted, right? Otherwise, how would you, I mean, how are you even putting together a product development roadmap for that? So there is some end goal in your mind when you say you want to develop a product. Either, like, it needs to solve like, I mean, in the carbon capture case, you would say, okay, it needs to have so much energy efficiency. It needs to have, the cost of carbon capture should be, this is what I'm targeting. So those are your specs. And then you kind of work back and say, okay, what does it take to get here? Isn't it better to define MVP before beginning the lab works and TRL progression? I'm not sure I understand that question. Maybe.
Just a moment, I'll try to unmute him.
Yeah.
We have unmuted you. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Hello, Vedam.
Yeah.
Actually, see what I did normally, the way it happens in industries, that they first define what should be the MVP considering all their techno-economic parameters. Okay. And accordingly, then subsequently the lab works are started. Right. So it is not that we are too much concerned with the TRL scale. TRL is basically for measurement of the progression, but beyond that, a lot of things are already predefined. That okay, now this is the this is like this is say we have to get this much shelf life, we have to get this much costing, and all these parameters, right? We define at the very beginning, not afterwards, like after starting the work. What do you say about that?
Yeah, so I mean, that's how product development happens at that end. I mean, if you look at how research develops, it's like, okay, I'm trying to solve for I mean, I have a new membrane. I'm trying to look for, like, where I can apply it. And then, okay, I can develop it at 1 inch, now 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. Now I'm developing it. I need to develop it at like 1 meter by 1 meter. That's how technology development happens. But from an early stage, you have to ask, like, where is this membrane going to be used? And what are the requirements of that particular area? Like Vedant just explained, you need to have a clear idea of your end goal and then kind of mature the technology to reach that stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was another question here, what's the difference between TRL 5 and 6? It really varies. I mean, in Barak's case, it says, I mean, an alpha tested product would be considered a TRL 5. A solution would be considered a TRL 5. Something that has gone past a beta testing, a software or an application that has gone beyond beta testing would be considered a TRL 6.
So Ashwin, we have unmuted you, Ashwin Gazra. Do you want to ask a question? Okay, there are, I think, more questions here. Bipin wants to know, often the specs of the prototype change, requiring lot of rework. And prototype is by definition work in progress and will change. So what is the TRL probably for that?
Is that the right, so is TRL the right framework for you then? I mean, TRL is not like a, I mean, hammer that I go hit any nail I see. I mean, you have to think, what is it that you are trying to accomplish? I mean, going back to NASA's original like place, it's like, okay, I want to introduce new technology to solve a particular problem in building this spaceship. Then, okay, and how do I know it is maturing and it is reaching a stage where it can be integrated into a larger system? That, I mean, that becomes space worthy, for example. So in that case, I know what are the specifications it needs to meet. If your specifications are changing all the time, then, I mean, that is not, I mean, what does your TRL framework doesn't help you at all, because you say, okay, I'm a TRL 5, it's not meeting the requirements, so I'm going and changing my prototype specification. Then it's kind of using the wrong tool for what you're trying to do. You probably need to go to, I mean, before you put together your specifications, you need to go do that. You know, the market gives you the specifications and you use that to drive your innovation. I think he's asking to be unmuted, Mukta.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I just
Ashwin,
explain,
Hira here.
Hiran? This is Bipin here. Can I just explain my question?
Yeah, I think there are two of you talking, or there's only one.
Yeah, you were. My question was regarding the prototyping, changing, and you mentioned that the design needs to be more or less firm before one starts prototyping. In practical prototyping, that's really not logical. The whole concept of a prototype is that it's a work in progress.
No, what I meant was you would know what the market, I mean, what is your target in terms of what you're trying to build?
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
Know that?
Absolutely. The trouble is that there is no such product in the market to go back to and look at and say, this is what I want to build. You're making something completely new. So unless you prototype, you don't get there. And that prototype will go through multiple iterations.
Okay, I think, I mean, here the prototype itself definition is kind of, we are talking about different things when we say prototype.
See, a prototype can't be a final product or a manufacturable product. It is going to go through any number of iterations, and at least in my case, I'm, whatever grants I've got or had applied for were at the very initial stage of that product development. I don't know what the product is going to be able to do because I don't have a physical product in hand to make the product that I want to make.
So you are starting at TRL1 then?
Well, if I go by the definitions, I'm already at 3. I mean, I get some results and then I find that I have to improve it. So I make some more changes. And then the question comes up, am I meeting objectives or not? There needs to be some consistency in that output of the product, which may happen or may happen 50% of the time, for example. Now, if it's happening 50% of the time, what TRL have I reached?
See, then, I mean, that's what I'm saying. If you need to know where you're going. If you're saying where I'm going is changing, then based on whenever it changes, your TRL need to be reassessed.
Okay, so you're saying that the TRL can be recalibrated.
It needs to be
Based-
recalibrated, right? If I start to make one product today, I built my TRL proof points based on that. And now I'm saying that, okay, these specifications are wrong. I need to go back and create new specifications. Then your TRL journey will be very different, right?
Absolutely. So I'm in full agreement
Yeah.
with that. The TRL needs to be recalibrated if there is a significant change happening in the design. My question was more from the perspective of, let's say, a BIRAC grant, where the grant then ironclads me to work within that particular specification, and I have no means of asking for more funds based on whatever changes have happened. So I could be wrong in my understanding of a BIRAC grant, but yeah, in my experience, then I get locked in with whatever TRL or whatever description I've given to that prototype, and then I'm stuck.
Well, that's what you promised the funding agency that you will deliver, right?
Yeah, but I mean, yeah. So my point is that the whole concept of a prototype, either BIRAC says that, well, a prototype cannot change, and
no, if it
but
doesn't,
then,
if it changes, you need to go back to them and say, okay, here is, I mean, I thought I was building this, but now I'm building something else. So can I use this funding for building that something else? That is the
okay.
discussion you need to be having with your funding agency.
Yeah, sure. Understood. Yeah.
You're not being locked into anything. It just means that you started thinking you're going to build this. You gave the proposal based on that. The funding came based on that. But now as you went along, you figured out that, no, that's not going to work. I need to go change it. So that's it. Then you have to go back to your funding agency and recalibrate yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Ashwin Gajra. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is in continuation to the question about the TRL if the product specifications are not ready. So this is basically why I'm asking is there is, say, for example, a technology which is under development for a product X, and that is now has reached up to, say, TRL level 4 or 5, but now because of some constraints in the process it is not moving, and the product X can be modified into product, say, Y, so which will have X, but there may be some changes in terms of the product quality as well as the type of product, but it will have the component X into it. And so now you are at TRL 4 with product X, but now your product is changing. So some of it got answered in the earlier question, but then how does that work? So this is technology plus product together. Now technology is
It's
already
the
at,
same. It is,
yeah.
see, whenever your goalpost changes, your technology roadmap changes, you have to again reassess what that does mean to your TRLs. I mean, TRL is just a framework for you to communicate internally or with your stakeholders.
Correct. I got it. Yeah,
Right?
because
Yeah.
no, this is from the investment readiness point of view. Yeah, because now when the TRL changes, from 4 to 5, then there is a lot of investment required for piloting and things like that. So that is where it becomes very critical for the company or the stakeholders to convince the financiers.
So
Yeah.
this is where you need to have your discussions with your funders, your investors, whoever is involved in the decision making, to say, okay, I thought I was building X, but now I'm taking X and it is going in some other direction. So I need to reassess this whole technology roadmap. And these are my new proof points that I need to go. And this is why I need to do that. So it is, I mean, there's nothing written in stone when you say TRL this. TRL this is based on what is the endpoint you're trying to reach and where you are at. If either of those change, of course, you have to again recalibrate, go talk to people, stakeholders, go talk to, have the discussion internally to get everybody back on the same page.
Got it. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Utkarsh, you had raised your hand. Did you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Just like the same question the person asked before me, I am having the same question, just with a slight change. Like I am having a product X, that is having all the technology, everything, all the components, everything. But in Y, I made one more product side by side, P, and I'm just merging it out. Both having different TRP, TRL levels. So like, what will be the new condition for it? Like, it is take a TRPL of which one, or it will be a new product for it.
I am not clear what he is
So I think he's asking
asking.
if he's developing another product also, then of course the TRL has to be done separately for that product.
If you're building two subsystems and trying to build a system using both of them, then if that is your end goal is that system and not each of these subsystems, then you have to do like, what does it take to build that product from these two subcomponents, and then integrate it, develop your roadmap based on that. Because you need to build it, you need to test it, integrate it, you need to test it, validate it, and all of these, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I answered the question.
Yeah. So before we proceed, take any more questions, let me alert everyone. The feedback link is in the chat box. Kindly requesting all of you to give your feedback before you leave the session. Are there any more questions? If yes, you can type them out, or yes, we can take one or two if Hiran allows.
Okay, because no.
Yeah, I think Hiran, you have answered all the questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Please give the feedback before requesting all the participants to give the feedback. And let me announce the next session, which is coming up on the 26th of November. The topic is only NDA and MTA. And my colleagues from Venture Center, Archana Joshi and Mamta Rangaswamy, would be leading this session. So with this, thank you, Hiran, for your time. And we look forward to seeing you here in our next mini workshop series, which will be announced soon. Happy to host you here in Venture Center. Thank you so much.
All right. See you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.